Hi, I'm William, and this is Foil Driven. In this episode, I'm going to try to help you along with a few tips that I picked up along the way for pumping specifically with a foil drive. Today, you'll see me on a 30-liter Axis pump, and attached to that, I've got the big boy, the Axis Art Pro 1401, and that thing is really impressive. I don't know if I would recommend that one for starting off as a beginner trying to pump. I think I would go with this one. This is an Axis P&G 1300, and it is extremely forgiving. It's what I learned how to pump on. Once I learned the basics for pumping with a giant foil like this one, let's not have it fall on me. Once I learned the basics for pumping with this giant foil, I was able to then transfer it down, and I can pump now almost effortlessly with this, a 1001. This thing is tiny. It's hard to tell maybe on camera. You attach this to the board and you can see how tiny this thing is, but the technique is all the same. So I don't want to belabor how to get the motor out of the water because I think there's a lot of videos out there. So I'm going to simply put it. I know a lot of people say you just ollie the thing out and you kind of level it out. But if you've never skateboarded, you probably don't know how to ollie. And so let's start with that. So here's how we're going to get the motor out of the water. You're motoring along. You've got you're on foil. You're on motor. You're cruising along. You're straight and level. Board is sort of riding flat. You blip the throttle to 100% and then unweight your front foot. And by that, I just mean you shift your weight from both feet to mostly your rear and raise your leg up. The nose will then follow it. And as it follows it up, get to the point where you want to level out and push the nose forward with your front foot to level it out, and then shift your body weight to both feet. So I think it's best to first just ollie the board out of the water and then glide it as far as you can. And I'll have an example here. What you do is you ollie it up, you level it out, and then you glide and you glide and you glide and let it keep the nose of the board level. And so what'll happen is it'll just begin to sink out slowly. And that's the foil losing speed, and you're gliding. And you'll drop, and right before you hit the water, put some throttle back on, and it'll level it a bit back out, and now you can go do it again. And do that over and over again until you figure out exactly how far you can glide out with these foils. And you'll find with a P&G 1300 or the 1401, the Spitfire 1100, the 1201, they all have a massive amount of glide. I mean, they're ridiculous. We didn't have this a few years ago. So you had the 1300, and that was it. I think that was kind of the benchmark for long glides back then. But now, you've got these 1400, the 1401s, the 1180. You've got all these different foils to choose from that'll do it well, and you can kind of balance, whether you want more glide or a little bit more turn or a lot more turn and a lot less glide. That's something like this. Comes with a ton of glide built into it, but it also has a high stall speed as a result of being so small. So you want to maintain speed with something like this, where you can see how slow I get with the 1401 in this video. So tip number one. Tip number one is figure out your glide. And honestly, actually, tip number one is get good with ollieing the motor out of the water. If you can't do that, you can't pump. It's as simple as that. You've got to get that feeling of riding with the motor out. And the easiest way to learn that is on the waves, because you'll have a little push behind you to keep you higher up, but it can be learned in the flats as well. So even if you're in the flats, don't get discouraged. I think there's plenty of ways to learn this stuff. Tip number two is the glide. Know your glide. Once you know your glide, you know exactly what the capabilities of that thing are. And I say glide it out until it sinks out. Now, another thing you can do, and I didn't do this today, so I don't have any videos of it, but knowing your stall speed is critical, because if you can feel that stall speed coming on, you know you have to pump. And that works in the waves too, if you're getting too slow. But And how you figure out your stall speed is you do that glide out, and instead of just keeping the nose level, you start to raise it. And it'll start slowing you down, and eventually it'll stall. And if you just glide it out a little bit, raise that nose until it finally slows to a point of just the nose will tip over and drop in. You might be, if you're high enough on foil, you might be able to save it and kind of just pump out of it, but maybe not. All right, so let's talk about stance for learning. And this is going to be a little different once you get the hang of it. But this stance is something my friend Nick taught me. It's a way to get acquainted with the proper feeling of using your rear leg to power through the pumping instead of your front leg. Because, look, if you're trying to pump with your front leg only, what's going to happen is you're taking the foil, and this is your front foot. It's going up and down. It's going up and down. It's going up and down. But you're not pumping. You see that stuff on the videos, but it's not translating to you. You don't understand what's going on. You see them pushing this front foot up and down. Why isn't it working? Because the front foot doesn't do anything for pumping, really. I mean, it does, but it's not the power foot. And so what happens is if you're trying to pump it up and down, you're just taking the nose and kind of flapping it almost. You're not getting. What you need is sort of a sine wave in which you're unweighting yourself, you're unweighting your front foot to go up, and your rear foot, you know you're doing it right when your rear foot is sort of arching up as well, and you're thrusting it up over the crest of it. You're going to create little waves in the water. And so you're going to thrust it to crest. And when it gets to the crest, then you're going to take both legs and you're going to compress down into it. And so you see when guys who are pumping well, that the nose of the board isn't flapping much. It's just kind of going up and down. It looks like, they're driving it with their front foot, but that's just not the case. What you're doing is you're driving your rear foot into the rear of the board, and you're compressing down it like you're going down a wave, like you're pumping down a skateboard ramp. You're pushing into the foil, into the water. You're pushing it down and forward through the water, and then unweighting again. So it's unweight, crest, compress, push down, do the same over and over again. Now the easiest way to go about learning that whole process is imagine yourself standing on the board. The nose of the board is this way. I'm going to be looking this way. And so what this does, I'm going to square my shoulders up with the rail. And if I need to look where I'm going, I'll take a glance and I'll look back. And what it's going to force me to use either both feet or focus my efforts on my rear foot, because the rear foot's going to be driving this thing. It's just going to be pumping and pushing down the hill. And if you're trying to do that, you can't get that push with your front foot. It's too far forward. So by squaring yourself up with your rails and looking this way when you pump, you will force your rear foot. And after a while, you get the feeling of it, then you can look where you want to go and you can change how you go about it. But I really advise when you start pumping to ollie it up, glide for a second, and then push down the hill. Your first one, you're already at the crest. So your first one is you're going to push down the hill, look across the rail when you do it. And the second tip that I have, another tip is you're lined up, you're pumping, you're going to throw your arms forward and throw them back. Throw them forward and throw them back. And what this is as you're going up the crest, you're throwing your arms forward, sort of like you would do on a swing set. So to get higher on a swing set, you throw your legs forward, and it takes you higher up that sort of that U. And so that's what we're doing as we climb. We're throwing ourselves up. Our feet are kind of, our heels are coming off the board, and we're bringing it up. As it crests, we're leveling out, going over the crest, and then you're compressing mostly with your rear foot, but a little bit, if you can push down with your front foot at the same time, you'll get the feel for it eventually. At first, it's going to be mostly rear foot, but both feet, and try to keep that nose from diving all over the place. You don't want it flapping. So if we're mostly controlling it with your rear foot, you can control it going down that hill with your rear foot and compress your body into it. So those are for deep pumps. And if you're climbing out, it's sort of like if you get really low when you're pumping, you're going to throw yourself hard up into the air, and as it crests, push down, so that you can get high on foil. Because this is your foil. If this is the water line, keeping it close to the water line will keep your entire mast out, and the entire mast is nothing but drag. So if you can keep it near the water surface, there's a noticeable difference on how much effort you actually have to make. And so when I'm pumping, my goal is to keep climbing back out every time I sink out to get to the highest point, so I'm near the water without breaching. That'll make my job easier. And you'll watch in the video, you'll see me when I'm pumping, when I get near the water, my cadence changes. It goes from these big, deep pumps into these sort of quick, sort of rapid pumps. And I'm changing my cadence because I don't need all that extra push. What I'm just trying to do is stay at the top, and it'll keep me going pretty fast. Just these tiny little pumps. So that's really where you want to be for most of the time you're pumping, is really high near the surface of the water, no effort, and you'll feel the difference. If you can keep it there, you can pump for a long time, especially if you're younger. You should be able to pump for minutes on end with the gear we have nowadays. So that's key. So number one, key is to focus on your changing how you pump from flap in the front to sort of both feet are pushing down the hill and unweighting to go up the hill. Second key is keep it near the surface. Third is when you're learning, steer across the rail instead of where you're going, because that's going to help you focus on trying to figure out how to make that rear foot. And honestly, there's not a whole lot else I can tell you that you can't just go out and experience with this. So the beauty of having the four-wheel drive is I would start your day off thinking, I'm just going to go out there, I'm going to ollie this motor out, I'm going to glide, I'm going to do it over and over again, so I get used to the idea of ollieing out, gliding, and then coming back on motor smoothly so I can do it again. Once you get that down, then move on to focus on steering across, or focus on looking across the rail and swinging your hands to get the most height and compression. And you can move on to once you get those nailed and you can pump straight and level, then you can move on to I guess fancier things that you'll use in the waves. Is learn how to pump into a circle, and that I don't have a whole lot of advice besides just trying it. I notice when I'm pumping in a backside carve, I'm sort of inside of sort of the circle, if you will. I'm leaned in a little bit more, and I'm kind of pumping around, and I'm climbing as I pump. It's easier for me sometimes to climb out pumping in a circle. So you'll see that in the video where I climb out as I do a circle. When I go front side, it's a really awkward feeling. I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm still pumping with my back foot, and I'm sort of, with my front foot, I'm guiding where it goes, how tight the circle is going to be. So I think in the rear, as I go backside, I think I'm using my rear foot a little bit more to guide where it goes. And you might have a different experience here. But for me, when I'm doing front side, I'm looking over my shoulder, and I'm using my front foot to sort of guide where I'm going. Okay, let's talk about one more thing. Pumping back out when you're connecting waves. Use everything you have. And what I mean is, when you are pumping up a wave, it's the most difficult part, I suppose. But when you crest over that wave, you can kind of do the same thing. What I'm saying, when you compress for your pumps, you can do the same thing on a larger scale. You can compress pushing down that wave and glide it out, and then shoot yourself back up the other side with that extra speed. So the wave itself, you can pump down a wave using the same technique as you would creating your own little waves. And it's hard to explain, but it's sort of like going down a skateboard ramp. You're pushing into the ramp. So you're pushing into the wave, and by pushing in, using the force of your legs, transferring that energy from your legs into that wave, it will push you forward, and you can just use the steepness of the backside of the wave to propel you, to get you to the next, to the next climb. And so use that. You can use it as you're pumping out, and say in flat water, as the chop's rolling through, you can pump down the backside of the little chop waves. And if you time it, you're just compressing down that and then popping over the next bump and then compressing down the backside of it. And that makes pumping out in flat water a lot easier as well. The amplitude of the wave can change, but the technique doesn't. So I think if you're doing big amplitude, then you're going to have the arms thrown forward and rear, or if you want to, it takes more effort. And if you want to do short, little, short amplitude, then your cadence speeds up. So it's faster if you're high in the water. All right, that's all the pump tips I have. I will say this: equipment does make a difference. The tools you use, and if you're trying to pump on say 1,000 square centimeters, that's going to be much more difficult than if you take one of these bad boys out. This will make your day a little bit easier. This one's pretty forgiving, so I recommend this one if you can get your hands on one, even if you're just borrowing it for a few weeks. That's all you need. Then you may want to advance to so many other different foils. Once you get the basic technique with the bigger foils, it's all the same. It's easier to learn on the bigger foils, and it's easier to maintain a longer pump with some of the bigger foils in flat water. But if you start getting chaotic water, if your waters are one other tip, you can try to do this in smooth water, because it's a whole different challenge to learn how to pump when you have other forces acting on your foil wingtips. So if you learn how to do this in smooth water, it will help. So here's my tips. Number one, learn how to ollie out and glide. Learn where your stall speed is. Then learn how to use your rear foot. And by that, the easiest way is to look across the rail, square your shoulders with the rail, try to pump that way. That'll get you the feeling. And the last tip is adjust your cadence to whether you're doing deep, heavy pumps or just light pumps near the surface. That's all I have. Thanks for watching. This has been Floor Room.